Hello there, welcome to Whiskey for Beginners, where I can do a really awful fake British accent, English accent. Britain, let's see, they call it the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, if I remember correctly. It involves England, Scotland, and Northern Ireland, and so to say there's a British accent is incorrect. You have varieties of an English accent. You have varieties of a Scottish accent. And there may be varieties within Northern Ireland. I don't know, in the 6 counties, it may be more or less the same accent. So I'm not doing a fake British accent. I'm doing a fake accent. Except right now, the way I'm talking now, that's the way I naturally talk. I'm not putting it on. I'm an adopted Texan, but the accent come to me naturally. I never tried to have it. What I want to talk about today are the terms everybody uses when talking about whiskey, both the ones they use and what I prefer. I think a lot of people, in fact, I know it because I see it and I hear it, are just going along with the herd. It's like a caribou looks around and says, why is everybody running? Never mind why everybody's running that way. I'm going to run too. In one of the Travis McGee mysteries, Meyer says that if he tried to jog, somebody would see him, a guy who's obviously not an athlete, running and would look uneasily in the other direction. I don't know what he's running from, but maybe I better run too. And before it's over, you'd have a thundering herd going down the road. And people are like that. They use the terms everybody else uses. They use the phrases everybody else uses. People are not original. I see online on MeWe, which is where I am, people not just dealing with whiskey. This is a general observation. They will have a whole post that's nothing but cliches that were old 20 years ago. They don't have an original thought. They don't use an original word. They couldn't come out with an original formulation if you held a gun to their head. Well, I like to say things my way. There are times, yes, when the best term, the best phrase is the one that everybody else is using. In that case, I have no problem with using it. But I'm not a copycat, and I make it a point, even if I have that natural inclination, and I make it a point too. So let's charge into this. Tell me, you see this glass of whiskey? I hope you can see it. It has nothing in it but whiskey. Is that neat? Well, yeah, it's some neat whiskey. And this room is not the neatest that I've ever seen. It could be neatened up some. But the whiskey is straight. People said straight for years and years and years, and there was no question of what it meant. And all of a sudden, I start drinking whiskey and went, what's this neat business? Initially, I did not know what people meant. Turns out what they mean is straight. I'll have some lineage straight. That's what this is. Lineage barley whiskey from Balcones Distilling. If you didn't see that, don't bother worrying about it. It was just a notion. But I drink my whiskey straight. Another thing. What is this? Is it a glass of whiskey? Oh no, it's a dram. It's a pour. And some people say dram over and over and over like they're afraid nobody will notice. Some people say pour over and over and over like if they don't convince themselves, then there's a problem. Well, if you want to call it a dram now and then, fine. If you want to call it a pour now and then, fine. But this is a glass of whiskey. Let's call things what they really are. And let me stop here and say, I'm not trying to offend you if it seems like I am. I'm not trying to. Yes, I get sarcastic. I know that. It's just me. If I tried to do this without sarcasm, it would be a total disaster. But these are things that I care about. I'm telling you the truth. This is what I really think. And if you differ with me, that's fine. But think about this. Are you using your own words or are you using everybody else's words because you should use yours? Okay. Is this what kind of whiskey is this? Oh, that's a solid bottle. To me, solid is more or less middle of the road. When I was working at Sam's Club, they revised their rankings a time or two. But for a long time, if you were meeting expectations, not exceeding, not falling below, but just meeting expectations where you were supposed to be, you were a solid performer. Nothing exceptional. Just doing your job. That was all. And until they decided they weren't going to give anybody the best ranking, I always got the best ranking. I was not a solid performer. I was above that. A solid bottle, to me, means one that's good. It's not bad, but it's not exceptional. So I'll say the whiskey's good. I'll say it's gorgeous. I'll say it's fantastic. I'll say it's delicious. And gorgeous, yes, is a word I use to refer to whiskey. This stuff is among it. Gorgeous stuff. It's all fruity and chocolatey and, oh man. I twisted my arm and took a sip of it. But this stuff I have here brings me to the next thing I want to talk about. Now, I'm looking at my notes, and I don't have the camera on the screen, so I don't know how well you're going to see this. But if you saw the label, maybe you were able to read it. Balcones labels are pretty. They're not always easy to read. But this is Balcones Lineage Texas Single Malt Whiskey, pot distilled. All their stuff is from a pot still. That's all I had. Oh, the chocolate, the semi-sweet chocolate on that finish is gorgeous. There we go, gorgeous. Single malt. You know where that term comes from? Or malt? It comes from Britain. Now, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think we're in Britain. I have this vague notion that we might be in a whole different country. What's the name? Oh, yeah, the United States. I have this idea that we have our own culture, our own version of English, our own ways of looking at things. I have this idea that once the founding fathers understood that the British government was not going to accord them the rights of Englishmen, they said, we're not British anymore, we're American, we're going to do it our way. Now, I could be wrong about all that. What I do know is I'm going to do it American style. There was this old TV show that I never could stand, Love American Style. I don't even remember what it was about. I just remember the name and that I didn't like it. But what's malt? Sprouted barley. Say sprouted barley, for Pete's sake. Don't say malt. Don't say malted barley. Sprouted barley. Everybody knows what that means. It's a barley seed and it's sprouted. Malt? What's malt? Why don't we try to confuse newbies, huh? So what's single malt? Well, again, that's a British term. If malt is sprouted barley and it's a single malt whiskey, then it must be whiskey made from sprouted barley. Oh, okay, that makes sense to a newbie. The single part means that it's from a single distillery and the mash bill is 100% barley. Therefore, single malt just means sprouted barley whiskey from a distillery. Why can't we just say barley whiskey and on the label say from such and such distillery, mash bills? You don't even worry about the mash bill. Do you know how many whiskeys there are out there that don't tell you the mash bill? Buffalo Trace acts like if they let you know what their mash bills are, the whole world will end. And everybody knows what it is. It's bourbon. You put barley whiskey on here, everybody will know what it is, including somebody who's never even heard of whiskey. He'll say, I don't know what whiskey is, but obviously it's made of barley. Whereas if it says single malt, huh? What's that? We're Americans. Let's speak American English. And yes, I get all heated about that. I have ancestors from Scotland, but they left Scotland. On my daddy's side anyway, my family has been here since 1799. Thomas Jefferson was still alive then. John Adams was still alive. Some of the founding fathers were still alive as far when the farthest back ancestor I know of was born. So we've been here for a long time. And I'm an American. I'm not a Brit. I'm going to talk American. But let's move on before you throw rocks at me. And if they come through the screen, I'm going to be very surprised. Moonshine. What's moonshine? Well, let me see. We have Tim Smith's Climax Moonshine, and we have this moonshine and that moonshine. And you know what? None of it's moonshine. Moonshine, by definition, is illegal liquor. If it's not illegal, it's not moonshine. Granite is granite by definition. It has a specific set of characteristics. And if you take a chunk of sandstone and say, well, we're going to pretend it's granite and this is granite now. No, it's not. It's sandstone. Legal liquor is not moonshine. Moonshine is the liquor you had to make under the light of the moon because it was illegal and the revenuers were out to get you. Now, I know why they're calling some of this stuff moonshine. They're trying to tie into the illegal liquor business, which has always been there and has some romantic notions attached to it. And at least some of the people making moonshine nowadays used to do the illegal liquor business. Tim Smith, he grew up with a moonshine and daddy, and he got into it from his daddy. And Mark Ramsey and Digger Maines, they made moonshine, and now they've got their own legal distillery. And I can't remember if they call any of their legal stuff moonshine, but it's a tie-in to that. It's a tie-in to the people who sold their potatoes by the bushel, their hogs by the pound, and their corn by the gallon. And they really did do that up in the Appalachians. There's a song, Rocky Top. Felice and Boudreaux Bryant wrote it. And if I mispronounce the names, I apologize. I believe they're Cajun first names. And my knowledge of Cajun French or Cajun English is zip. But Felice and Boudreaux Bryant, Boudleaux, not Boudreaux, Boudleaux, it's an L. They wrote this song called Rocky Top. And there is a Rocky Top in Tennessee. It's a mountain. And they have this line in there about how all the folks on Rocky Top, or corn just won't grow on Rocky Top. The dirt's too rocky by far. That's why all the folks on Rocky Top get their corn from a jar. Now, when I was a kid, I thought, must be where they put their corn up. Because my mom would can stuff, which means putting it up in a mason jar. But the older I got, the more I understood. They're talking about illegal liquor. They're talking about corn liquor, moonshine, corn squeezins, white lightning, Mountain Dew. There's been various names for it. And by the way, Mountain Dew soda water, it took its name from one of the terms for illegal liquor. And it used to have the hillbilly on there, and I like that. Let's not deny our roots. Yahoo, Mountain Dew, that was cool. But I guess they didn't want anybody to associate them with the real world. But moonshine is illegal liquor. Okay, next term. There's the crack or the fresh crack. Nobody in the whole world apparently says, I just opened this bottle. Or I'm just opening this bottle. Or let me open it up now. It's always fresh crack. Come on, people. Can't any of you come up with a distinctive, personal, your way of saying it? Please? Just for me? If you can't be original, why are you saying anything? If all you're going to do is sound like everybody else, go be a lemming. They don't really run off cliffs, though. They do when their population gets too big, they do migrate. But the idea that lemmings all go off the cliff is hogwash. But it sure is a neat thought. When you just repeat the same thing everybody else says without thinking about it, without saying it your way, you're like those herds of wildebeest out on the Serengeti plain. You don't know where you're going. You don't know why you're going. You're surrounded by everybody else. You can't see where you're going, but you're going because they are. Well, use your own brain for a change. Do your own thing. Okay, moving on. The last one in my notes here. Price point. Now, this isn't just a personal preference as to terminology. People literally are using it wrong. A price point is that point where you get the most sales of your product. If you price it a little higher or a little lower than the price point, then sales fall off. Don't ask me why sales would fall off if the price goes down, but they do. If you have a range for something, say a bottle of whiskey between $40 and $50, and it sells best at $45, then $45 is the price point. But some store might sell it for $46. That's not the price point. That's the price. The price point is $45. This store may sell it for $35. That's not the price point. That's $10 below the price point, which is $45. But why would anybody say that anyway, even if it... Forget the fact that it's an incorrect usage of a specific term with a specific meaning. Forget that. Why would you say that the price point of this bottle is $39.99 when it would be easier and quicker and less pretentious and less pompous to say the price is $39.99? Why would you do that? Who came up with that? I honestly cannot feature how or why some people come up with some of this stuff. And I certainly can't feature why everybody else will pile on, I'm going to turn my brain off and do just like him because I want to be like him. I don't want to be like me. I don't understand it. It is utterly beyond me. I was born in 1960, so I grew up in the 60s and 70s watching the hippies. I got to do my own thing, man. Yeah, and if I didn't know you were separate from him, I'd think you were the same person. You dress the same, your hair is the same, you talk the same, listen to the same music. There's no individuality here, boy. They talk about rugged individualism. In the United States, we don't have it, at least not much. And I said earlier, I'm not trying to be offensive, but I suspect that I am being offensive without trying to, not just because I get sarcastic about this stuff, and I do, and I can't help it, it just comes out. I suspect that I'm being offensive because I am saying things that people don't want to hear. I'm saying, essentially, you are a follower, not a leader. You're a nullity, not an individual. You're not using your brain. You turned your mind off. You're just following the leader, and you don't care where he goes. You'll follow him off the cliff. And that is going to offend some people, unfortunately. And who knows, maybe I'll make this video and let it sit and decide to delete it after all without uploading it. If you're hearing this, obviously I didn't make that decision. But it irks me that so many people are herd animals and not individuals, that they are willing to do what everybody else does rather than use their own minds. They're willing to talk like everybody else rather than say things their way. They're willing to do their hair and their whiskers and their clothes like everybody else. Do you think they're smarter than you? Or are you as smart as they are? If you're as smart as they are, why are you letting them tell you how to dress and talk and all this jazz? Be yourself, for bloody Pete's sake. And on that note, I have ranted and I have raved, and as I say, I might have offended some people. And it is time for me to end the video. I don't have the camera in front of me, as I said earlier, and I'm working here to do my notes so I know what I've covered and what I haven't. And now I'm switching back to the camera. So this is a 22+ minute video. I've gone on and on and on. I've probably offended somebody without intending to. I apologize if I have. But this stuff has been irking me about whiskey drinkers for almost 3 years now. And hopefully somebody will hear this and say, you know, he's got a point. I can talk just as good as these guys. I'm going to do it my way.